Okay, let's go.
He wants to jump
1,000 cars. Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
I don't think I'd attempt to try this stunt.
Or we owe this horsepower to Uncle Sam.
Too many cars.
Car. Roses would be...
Like I put my beer belly on it.
If you can't immediately tell somebody how many cars you have.
You'll really give those uppity yuppies something to think about.
Stay on the bar. Don't go off the bar with your Bronco.
1980 Volvo horns, what's right? I want a man's coolant.
And he's like, oh, I thought it'd be small. It's for a small car. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still an automatic transmission. They're never going to be light.
It's definitely going to have to crash.
Starting off with Brad buying another car.
That's the West. Internet.
Is this a Nigerian oil print?
I also wish you drove a tan Camry.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that's a
horrible,
very
horrible podcast content.
very
Talking about a picture.
inside joke.
It loves to be driven hard.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Auto Off Topic. How goes it, Brad?
Andrew, it goes good. How goes it
good?
there?
It goes well here. A little snow today. I was telling you about right before the podcast here, I was realizing the whole house stunk of gas. And I was like, that's kind of weird. I know I spilled a little bit of gas putting it into the snowblower, but it usually doesn't smell that long. So I went and investigated, and apparently the gas tank of the snowblower is leaking. So that went from being in the garage back to the shed. So hopefully the smell goes away. So maybe I'm, like a little bit of gasoline makes like a ton of smell.
It does. It does. It also gets you just high enough to be very entertaining on the podcast.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've also have a dark and stormy, so we're good to go.
Okay. We were actually just talking on the Discord the other day with everybody, and I told a similar story where I disassembled a motorcycle in my basement of my old home in Massachusetts that I used to own. And I had forced hot air heating, and I used copious amounts of PB Blaster on this old rusty motorcycle. And I made my entire house stink like PB Blaster for a long time. So I have a feeling it's probably a similar situation you have there. But thankfully, you don't have forced hot air heating, because that's what really screwed me up was the forced hot air took all that smell from the basement and just evenly distributed it amongst the rest of my home and over all of my soft furniture. So at least you're not that bad off.
Drafty house.
I also had an old drafty house, but it had forced hot air, so it was able to. That 1921 construction would not keep in the heat, but it certainly kept in all the PB Blaster smell. So not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
It took like 2 weeks to go away. It was not good. So I guess that's a pro tip of the week. Don't use PB Blaster next to your forced hot air furnace in your basement.
I stopped using PB Blaster really because of the smell. It just stinks. I don't like it.
Well, this was probably 2009 or 10, and there weren't any alternatives we knew of yet then. I don't think we had switched to like Deep Creep or anything yet. We were just pretty much exclusively using PB Blast.
Yeah, I'm all in on that Deep Creep. It doesn't smell that bad. It's clear. So if it gets on stuff, it doesn't like really stain, other than like maybe a little oil stain. But anyway.
Does it pass the styrofoam cup test that PB Blast does not?
I don't know what that even proves.
I don't know either, but
it's kind of creepy. What is in PB Blaster that melts styrofoam?
It just proves how terrible it is.
Yeah.
I will say that since moving to Arizona, my budget for other things has increased because my Deep Creep budget has decreased. So I don't think I've purchased a can. I think I purchased one can when I first bought this house, and I think I still have the same can. And I think the only reason I needed it was because I brought the Starion out here. I took the tank out of it.
That when I was working on the Q45, I had a fairly new can, and I without realizing, I knocked it over and it rolled under the car, and then I went to move the car and ran over it in the driveway and just blew up a whole can of seafoam in the driveway.
That's annoying.
It's like, oh, that was $10.
Yep. Yeah, it's not cheap. But like I said, I don't have to buy it anymore because I moved to the land of rust-free cars.
It's pretty sweet.
It's really sweet.
Well, speaking of decent rust-free cars that came from there, I did finally get a phone call this afternoon from the machine shop. So the engine is ready to be picked up.
Awesome.
So I'm going to go pick it up next week some point.
So it's a bare block. It's not going to be assembled.
No, my dad and I are doing the assembly.
Okay.
All they did was the machine work. And they painted it for me at least. So I'm not going to have to paint it, but yeah, they did whatever. I actually didn't even look at the itemized receipt. I just looked at what the cost was, but I had them clean up the cylinders. They polished the crank. I had them check to make sure that because one of the things they mentioned, I brought them the cam bushings and the cam, because sometimes it happens where you buy these things even though they're the right size. You go to put it together and they're not the correct size. So they were supposed to push the cam bearings in for me and then just double check that the cam fit. So, or I'm sure they didn't put it in. They probably just measured it because they have better measuring capabilities than I have. What else? Put new freeze plugs in because the whole thing got cleaned, right? What else? I said the crank was polished. Oh, they put new pin bushings in at the small end of the rods because one of those was hard to get apart, which was the number one piston, the one that was really beat up because it clearly overheated. So they replaced all those pin bushings. So my dad and I will put the new pistons on. I've got the new bearings. We'll put the crank in and all that stuff. And once I go pick it up, I'll order. I didn't order timing gears yet for it. I'll order the timing gears and a gasket set and a head gasket and start putting it back together.
That's positive news. So it shouldn't be long, probably. You going to do that over the winter here?
Yeah, because it should be something we can do at night. We'll just throw the engine together and then hopefully get it in the car. I'm going to have to put the transmission back in. I still have to rebuild the drive shaft. I want to soak the carbs in carb cleaner to make sure they're nice and not sticky. I know you tried to clean them up a little bit, but I want to make sure they're really good. Plus, I need to hunt down all the correct linkages because I don't want to use the cables. I want to use the actual linkages and modify the factory stuff to make that work. So it's got a little ways to go. Once the engine's in there, it's not going to be I'm going to fire it up that weekend. It's going to be probably a couple more weeks of work once the engine is actually sitting in the car.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend doing more with those carbs because I cleaned them to the level of trying to get the car running. I didn't clean them and go through them and make sure they were nice. It was more of a minor repair than anything else.
No, I'll do a deep clean with some carb cleaner. Maybe look at getting some rebuild kits. Plus, I don't even know what jets and stuff are in them. I got to double check. There's a website that has a bunch of information on running those carbs in that car. So I got to figure out what jets are in it. And if I don't have them, make sure I have them.
Yeah, and those are thankfully cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, they aren't. And I think they're really easy to change over to. So
yep. Yeah, that's the beauty of those style carbs in general is they're a very easy carb to work on. There's not a lot of moving parts.
And the other thing I'm going to have to do is once everything's in there and I get the header on, it's a different style header. It should fit, pretty sure. But it's more of the 421 and it's got an angled flow than just going down and making a hard 90 degree like the other style headers. So I'm going to have to modify the exhaust I have or fabricate exhaust or buy a different exhaust. So it's not this isn't going to be I'm going to throw the engine in on a Saturday morning and have the car running by a Sunday night. It's just going to be, another month of work after the engine is in. Yeah, and there's no like rush. The only rush is I'd like to have it, running by like the end of April so I can use it in the nice weather,
Yeah,
which I
it
think
should
is
be.
attainable.
I think it's a very attainable goal, especially if you just pick away at it, do the whole auto off topic Discord approved hour or two an evening kind of plan,
Yeah.
where you just work on a little here, work on a little there, and just get it done.
Yeah, and it's not a super complicated car. There's not, there isn't like a bunch of messed up wiring in the interior somewhere. I don't think. It doesn't seem like it. I'm not going to worry about the interior. I'm not going to worry about that dashboard. I'll do all that stuff. I've talked about this before. I'll do all the interior stuff and switching the seats over and all that good stuff once the car's running and driving, and mechanically it's good. Then I'll focus on doing the interior.
Yeah, we talk all the time about how we just want to get a vehicle to the point where it runs, and then you can do like a sympathetic rolling restoration on everything else.
Yeah, because the motivation that you have once it's running and driving, you're like, oh yeah, now I can actually use this. Now I'll pull it apart and do the interior.
Yeah. Well, it's literally the antithesis of like the television show builds where they get every car in, they strip it down to a bare shell, and then rebuild it from the ground up. But unfortunately, as a backyard hobbyist, that's a surefire way to never finish your car. So
Yeah.
it's much better to pick and choose how you're doing it and do it a little at a time, because you're not trying to build a 100-point show car here. So in order to make an enjoyable, usable car, that's the best way to do it.
I also can't afford that. I can't afford to pull all the glass out. I can't afford to repaint the car. Like it's fine the way it is.
It's not even a question of affording it or not, because if you picked away at it and did it a little at a time and did most of it yourself, you could certainly afford it. But
Yeah.
it's just the fact of all that extra work for not a lot of extra gain. And on top of it, you lose the motivation to finish it. And then next thing you know, it's, Volvo 142 shell for sale, $1,000.
Yeah, and it's and there's a lot of people. I remember growing up, you'd go and they'd see these cars that they have at cruise night, and they have that big book of all the stuff, and they brought it back to bare metal, and it's like it took me 15 years to do this, and it's like that. To me, I guess I'm just not that patient. I'm patient for some things, but I'm not that patient, and that doesn't seem appealing to me to take one car down to nothing in my garage and put it back together.
Nope.
It's for some people, it's not for me.
It could also be something that I could see doing if I had unlimited space and a place where I could put a project in the corner and I could pick away at it as time went on. I could see doing that, and I do intend on doing that at some point on a flat body Starion. Maybe not mine currently, but I'd like to take one down to almost nothing and make it like brand new looking. But at the same time, like I just enjoy my tinkering projects. I guess we're probably more than tinkerers. I guess that's probably putting it too easily, but I enjoy quicker, easier, smaller projects for one big goal. Like my truck I just did. I didn't strip it down to nothing. I just made it work.
Truck's awesome.
And I love it.
I
love
I'm
it.
so happy that worked out, because here's the thing is, and we've talked about this before. It's once it gets to a certain point, if I make the thing too nice, I'm not going to want to use it because I spent all this time and money on making it perfect.
Yeah.
And right now, the Volvo is imperfect, and that's fine. It's perfect the way it's perfectly imperfect. It's the way it's just great. Like once it runs, I can drive it, and it's like whatever. If it gets a little scratch or something, it's not a big deal, or some rock chips, just adds the patina. It's all good. There's runs in that paint, whatever. I'll buff it out best I can, and my plan is to just drive it. I'm not gonna worry about doing a full resto or have anxiety over the paint not being original or perfect.
Yeah, you want to be able to enjoy the car. So, and that was my point with the truck, was that I didn't want to go too nice with the truck either, because I want to still go off road. So, and going off road, you're going to get scratches and you're going to get marks, and I'm not going to throw it into the bushes or drag it over rocks, but I can't be afraid to take it off road and get a little dirt in it and get a little scratch on it. And so, in fact, I have an off-road trip planned for March now with a couple other Mitsubishi people. So it should be should be a few more things to do before then, and updates to come there.
Yeah. And it's funny because I sent a separate message to you because on Instagram, right, you can send the same message to like different people. Just it ends up going separately. And I sent a thing about King of the Hammers to you, and I was like, we should go. And you were like, yeah, we're thinking about it. And then two other people were like, yeah, we're also thinking about it. So I was like, man, at some point we should really just plan a trip for a bunch of people to go to King of the Hammers because it just seems like a cool motorsports thing to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I
that's-
think there is a RC element there too.
There is.
I think it'd be cool to see that. Yeah.
I've been seeing that. Yeah. Because now we're back in RC stuff. And that's the other thing that I feel like you and I try to promote on this podcast is like go to the events, go to different motorsport stuff, just go be there and experience it. You don't have to do it every year, but like just at least do it once. It's cool. Like I don't know what IMSA race I'm going to try to go to this year, but I'm going to try to go to another one that I haven't been to, or maybe I'll try to go back to because towards the end of the year it might be easier to plan. I'd like to go to Petit Milan again, but I'd also like to go to Laguna Seca.
I assume you mean Petit Le Mans, not Petit Milan, which is what you said. Yeah.
Did I say that? I thought I said Petit.
You did say Milan. Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's the gas fumes.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, it's got to make the show more entertaining. I'm shooting for the Long Beach Grand Prix, which is going to be IndyCar road course. There's is it IMSA or WEC? I don't even remember. It's one
That
or
is
the other.
IMSA.
It says IMSA.
That's IMSA.
And there's a stadium trucks and professional drifting. And I've never been to a professional drifting event. I've never been to a stadium truck event. So that'll be cool. I've never seen Indy cars on road course. So that's my plan.
Pro drifting at Grid Life in Atlanta.
Was that pro level drifting?
They were pretty pro.
I guess it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't like FD spec though, right? So
no. Yeah. I can't make it to that one, but I am doing something else. I don't want to talk about it yet, but I'll have a bunch of cool car content from what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would gladly give up going to Long Beach to do your trip. So I'm stoked for you. So that's cool. But yeah, no, I agree. Go to the event, and that doesn't just mean spectating professional sporting events either. It means go to your local drift event, go to your local autocross, rallycross, meet the people, see what's going on there, get involved, and eventually you can get into it. You know, do you want to try off-roading? Don't have a truck? You know, find somebody who does. Most people who are into that like light off-roading trail driving are pretty friendly and probably would take you for a ride. So it just do the thing, enjoy the thing, and build your interest from there. So anyway, any more updates in the Volvo, Andrew, or any other project car stuff?
No, I can talk about later in the episode if you want. I was just working on some RC cars. That's it. We can do a scale project car updates after. Yeah. Do you have any project car updates? You've been driving that truck around?
I haven't done much major since the last podcast, but I have done a few things. I'm still getting my garage up and running. This particular week, I purchased a television. Well, Naomi went out and bought a television for me because she knows I wouldn't do it. So she went out and did it. So that was nice of her. So we have a new television for the back garage, which will make spending time in there nice. I can just put on endurance racing or NASCAR or some kind of racing in the background and do my wrenching and working on things in the garage. Did a little more organizing of things in the garage. Still haven't moved the toolbox out there, but it's coming. It's coming. Maybe this weekend. So what I did do was minor things that turned into a little bit more of a project. I like motorcycles. Motorcycles are fairly easy to work on usually. But I had to put a battery in the Enfield. And it was not a simple process. So that was a bit frustrating. I mean, I guess I can probably sit here and say it wasn't a simple process. The entire project took an hour. So I guess that's not the end of the world. But I feel like putting a battery
a bit much for a motorcycle.
Putting a battery in should take 5 minutes. So it's just a packaging deal. You know, motorcycles haven't sized up much since they were, invented. They're all about the same size. But when I think about my old Yamaha that I used to ride around, it was a very basic thing. It had 3 wires to the back, turn signals, tail light, and plate light.
Probably.
And I mean, maybe more than 3 wires, but 3 circuits basically to the back and nothing else. So the battery was in the frame. You took the side cover off, battery comes up, battery goes in, all is well and good. Now, modern motorcycles, again, not being any bigger than old motorcycles, but now this motorcycle has fuel injection and anti-lock brakes and I don't know, whatever else it has, GPS systems and computer systems and emissions controls. And it has a lot more stuff packed into the same area. And everything was sort of in the way of where that battery goes. So you just kind of have to, it's a lot of remove and install to get to the battery. So I'm not going to stress too much about it. Again, it was only 1 hour. It wasn't like it took me all weekend. So I guess I probably sound like I'm complaining that it took a long time. And honestly, now that I've done it once, it probably wouldn't be an hour the second time. It would probably be a quick, 15 minutes. But regardless, it's in there. So that's good. The biggest issue with motorcycle batteries, and I've said this ever since I changed my first motorcycle battery 15 years ago, is that they don't use a post style. They use a screw that goes into a post. And the post is hollow on the inside. And inside that post, you have a little rectangle nut that the screw goes into. But that nut is loose inside the post. And the supplied screws are never long enough once you stack the things on top of the battery, like the cables, or in my case, I have a positive and negative cable, but I also have positive and negative connector rings for the trickle charger. So it's impossible to get that screw to thread into that little captured nut inside there without being super creative. So on older motorcycles, it wasn't as big of a deal because you could do everything outside of the bike and then flip it over and put it back in. But this battery's inside a battery box, so you don't have access to the side of the terminal to lift that little piece up to meet the bottom of the thing. So I had to devise this system of cardboard and painter's tape to make the thing sit high enough to catch on the screw when I was screwing the thing in. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's a kind of a hard one to understand, I guess.
No, I know.
Nonetheless, it's done. I think I got all the tape out of there, but as long as it doesn't cross the positive and negative together, it shouldn't cause a fire, so I'll be okay. I think it's all out of there though. But yeah, it's all done. Bike fired right up, which is good. I have not ridden since last riding season, and I feel a little guilty about letting it sit. But just with the garage project, everything else going on here, Naomi had to recover from surgery for 3 months, and then we went on that long cruise, and there's a lot of prepping for that, and it kind of got pushed to the back of the garage, and other things got done instead. So it's unfortunately we're into February now, and it's already starting to get warm here, so it probably won't be much of a riding season. So I will have it out hopefully this weekend and put some miles on it and make sure everything else is up to snuff from sitting. And it will be listed for sale once I wash it and clean it. So if you're interested in a well-maintained, low-mileage 22 or 23 Royal Enfield Himalayan, let me know. I'll cut you a good deal for listeners. So that will be on the chopping block.
Sounds good.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like the bike. I love the bike. It's a great bike.
Just don't use it.
I don't use it enough for 2 reasons. One, I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast before or not, but one of the big draws to purchasing that bike was doing off-road trips. And the romanticism of doing an off-road trip in my head was better than in reality. For a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to do off-road trips by yourself because you're out in the middle of nowhere on uneven ground with no cell service. So that's a negative. And two, I want to go off-roading and go camping. And I generally want to go camping with Naomi, and I can't two up on that motorcycle. Not that I would anyway. So that kind of is a negative towards that. Plus, I also now have the pickup truck that can go off-roading. So that's also going to take away from any actual off-roading I would have been doing. The second thing is, if I lived in New England or someplace not Phoenix, I probably would have used it a lot more. Simply because the top speed is a bit limited, and riding around here, the speed limit is 65 most places, and you really have to spend a lot of time here on the freeway to get anywhere, and not having a higher top end on the freeway. Not that I want to cruise at 100 miles an hour, but you don't want to be at basically your top end and not have maneuverability to pass or accelerate out of situations. So I just feel a little more vulnerable on the motorcycle, on the freeway system here, than I would on a quicker motorcycle. So I think that's part of the issue as well. And there's just so much distance you have to cover here in between things, where it's like, if I want to go off-roading, I have to go 50 miles on the highway. And on the highway at a steady 70 miles an hour, the bike is singing up near redline. So I don't feel like it's the right environment for the motorcycle. And I'm not saying I'm getting out of motorcycling, because I'm definitely not. I may try to get back into something vintage, because at least then I'd have the use case of like going to the vintage motorcycle events. So it would give me a destination. So I also bought the motorcycle right when I stopped having a commute, and I'd probably use it a lot more if I had a commute. But I have a company car for work, so I don't have a commute, so nothing gets driven anymore unless I have a destination. So again, I think that's why I'm probably going to sell, put the bike in the market. So it's going to go in the market, and I'm going to ride it and enjoy it until it sells, and not get mad about it selling. That's the plan. And obviously I'll maintain it and keep it nice until it sells. So it'll still be around for a little bit. But that's one project I did. The other one was even less work. It was just a bit of an exploratory look into the 80 Corolla, which I'm sure you remember, Andrew, was not making compression on cylinder number 3, last we heard.
Yeah,
so
super bummer.
Yeah, big bummer. So I don't really know what's going on. It was a ton of blow-by, so my assumption is it's bottom end, rings, piston, something along those lines. But I had never even taken the valve cover off, and it happened like a year ago. So I was like, let me at least pop the valve cover off and take a look and see if there's something stupid happened. I could take a look at the push rods, and I can take a look at the rockers, and take a look at the head itself and make sure there's nothing weird that's visible. And I pulled the valve cover off, and when I bought the car, I was told the engine had about 10,000 miles on it. And it's mint. So I believe it. Like, it looks like fresh, not run casting. There's barely any like oil staining in the entire top end.
Yeah, I saw the pictures in the Discord. Come join the Discord. Hint,
yeah.
hint.
Yeah, it's super, super, super clean. Which is even a bigger bummer that it blew up. I even have the receipt for when the engine was built. And I was like, maybe if it was not too long ago, maybe it'd be covered in some kind of warranty. But it was built in 2016. So I'm going to say that they would not honor anything there. So did a little exploratory surgery. Didn't find anything obvious. I'm going to move some cars around this weekend. and put it in a spot where I can. I mean, at this point, I think I'm just going to pop the head off. So that's the next step. But it's a pretty simple engine. It's a cam and block like your Volvo. Shouldn't be a tremendously difficult thing to look into. And if it's something as simple as, a cracked ring or something, it might not be down that long. So we shall see. But yeah, that's my project car status stuff. I didn't do much else. It was a pretty lightweight week of car work.
All right. Well, that's cool. Scale project car updates. I might as well get into that. I was working on the 110 scale element a little bit. I did I swapped all the wheels over to the Injora aluminum wheels. Put the weights in them. I did a little video on it. I'm trying to put a couple videos together on this thing because nobody really did a video on shortening the wheelbase. So that's kind of I was like, I might as well do a video on putting these wheels together. And then I started doing the wheelbase change video. I'm like halfway through it. The problem is these crawlers require a couple sets of tools that I don't have to like take them apart. They've got like through bolts with metric nuts on the ends for some of the links, and they're 5mm nuts, and you can't get that little T-handle tool that comes with every RC car in there. So I got to get like an extended driver, and I ordered those. So I'm waiting on those to come, but I put the links together because the links were metal and I've got the plastic end links, and I put the little ball joints in them because I had to order the correct ones from, this is an associated Element. Element is the off-road crawlers, but the parent company is Associated. The correct parts to shorten the wheelbase to a 313. I forget what this one is, like a 321 or something.
So for the uninitiated in RC crawler world, there's two main wheelbases, 313mm and 242mm. So that's what you're trying to do, is make this kind of odd wheelbase one a 313mm so that you can use a standard RC car body, which you bought the Montero.
Yes. Which the body will fit on there great. I just have to set up the mounts. It came with an optional tall mount. I got to figure out how to mount some like magnets to them. There must be adapters to put like magnets on them or something.
There are, yes.
So maybe you send me those. I haven't found them yet. So, and then I got to figure out the front and rear bumpers have to come off, and I got to figure out there must be like a shorter version to like brace the two ends of the frame rails. Because basically these crawler trucks, if you're not familiar with them, are essentially set up as a body on frame truck. Like they're literally just a scaled down truck. They have two steel frame rails. The front suspension on this is IFS. It's got a motor this one's mid mounted. Some of them are up front over the front axle. But the rear axle, it's got trailing arms and shocks. It's crazy how they literally just took a real truck and just scale it down.
I mean, that's what got us into this, honestly, is just that we were kind of like seeing some RC stuff come back, and then, I got you that other RC car for, I don't know, your birthday or whatever it was for, and it kind of was like, oh, these trucks are so neat because they're literally just tiny trucks. Like there's no difference. It's just a tiny truck.
Well, that's the thing. The touring cars were always their own chassis. They had like four-wheel independent wishbone suspension, but they don't resemble an actual car chassis because they just can't. But with these crawler trucks, they can actually resemble an actual truck chassis. Like it just works. And it's interesting because my first experience with them was that CC01 chassis from Tamiya, which is a Piero chassis. It's like it's very big. I mean, it's from, when did they probably start making those? Late 80s, 90s?
I was going to say probably from the mid 90s for sure, like 94, 95. Which is why most of the bodies are like Isuzu Amigo, Honda CR-V, Mitsubishi Pajero. Like they're all mid 90s cars.
It's a very basic, very typical Tamiya bathtub chassis, but those had IFS in the front, and like a 3-link in the back, but still very much an RC style version of that, just emulating what a real truck would be like. Where these are like really getting scaled down from real trucks. Like on this Element, the front suspension is from a company that does real off-road suspensions. It's like Camberg. It's like a Camberg design IFS, which is really cool. But my main gripe was that just this chassis or this car that I bought, because it wasn't a kit, it just wasn't very scale. The body's not that scale. The tires weren't scale. But the rest of it is a good base to build a scale thing off of. So that's what I've just been working on, just a little bit at a time. I still need to take it apart and put bearings in it. I was going to try and do a video on that too, because there isn't much. Again, typical auto off topic, we pick the things that are not as popular. And just like in real life, an IFS off-road truck is not as popular as a solid axle off-road truck, even though it's perfectly fine. And you can do a lot of off-road stuff with IFS.
Yeah, well, my little RC truck is not IFS, but it is no longer supported anywhere. So I also have that same problem. But again, with the way these trucks are put together, a lot of stuff is universal. So,
Yeah.
The links, like the suspension links and everything are all just, whatever millimeter ball ends, and you can swap on different axles and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm not really worried about it, because the frame rails are really the important part. Once you have the frame rails, everything else you can just kind of make work. So,
so where I was going with that,
okay,
is that I need to remove these bumpers because they're too big to fit under the body. They go beyond the other body that came with the truck because it's Lexan, and the Piero body that's going on here, the Montero body, is a polycarbonate body, so solid white plastic like a model kit. So anyway, I need to find something to tie. I want to tie the front and rear frame rails together, just like a little faux bumper that would go underneath the body, just to retain that rigidity. So I have to figure that out, but because I don't want to have to chop these bumpers down, but I could.
So a non-polycarbonate. Polycarbonate is the Lexan style, right?
No, polycarbonate is the white bodies. Are they not polycarbonate?
No, polycarbonate is the clear Lexan.
Okay,
so you're talking
ABS
about
plastic? Is that what these white bodies are?
Either injection molded or ABS or resin or whatever. Every manufacturer uses different ones, but polycarbonate is the standard clear RC Lexan. That's why the Tamiya spray paints for Lexan are called PS. They're polycarbonate spray.
See, I just call it Lexan, but I thought polycarbonate was the white.
Nope.
White plastic.
Nope. I don't.
I guess I don't know what the white plastic's called. So
white plastic,
but it's
the vernacular. The RC car vernacular for non-Lexan bodies is hard body.
Yeah, so it's a hard body.
Yeah.
It gets you more detail and just a better. You don't need a Lexan body for a crawler truck, I don't think.
No, it makes things more scale. The Lexan is lightweight for racing, obviously, for RC cars, but the hard bodies, they're much more scale looking. They look like a real vehicle, I guess you could say. So It looks like my truck is still available, but having a hard time buying stuff for it. That's okay. But yeah, mine is going to be the 242 millimeter wheelbase. So I have shorter wheelbase bodies. Yeah. It's the same as the CC01 that you were talking about, because my intention when I first purchased it was to buy the Tamiya short wheelbase Pajero body for it. It just turns out that you can't find that thing anywhere. So,
well, isn't there a 1/10 scale first gen body?
It's 313 millimeter.
Oh, it's big.
Yep. So I will not be using that either. And actually, it scales out to way bigger than 1/10 because of that. So it looks more like a, 1/8 or 1/6 scale, because it's the same. It's designed to fit the same style chassis that your long wheelbase one fits, but it's supposed to be a first gen short wheelbase, which is like in reality half the length of a four-door Montero. So
Yeah.
So I have a first generation Ford Bronco body from Tamiya for mine that I have to finish. So it'll still be cool. It just won't be what I eventually intended it to be. But I have to finish mine by March because that off-road trip that is planned for March also will include tiny trucks. So that will also
Nice.
be in the cards, which will give me the reason to finish it because I bought this truck, I don't know, 10 years ago. So I should probably finish it.
All right. Well, speaking of tiny things, were you able to watch the Clash at Bowman-Gray Stadium?
Didn't know where you were going with that, but I'll take it. Yes, I did watch the Clash. No regrets. Great
No.
race.
I liked it better than being in LA. I think it's way
Yeah.
cooler.
100%. 100%. The atmosphere was cooler just on television. I imagine that it was way better there. Probably because it was all genuine NASCAR fans. It wasn't like trying to bring in new people. It was just back to the core of NASCAR. I sent you a link, actually in the Discord, to a video about the history of Bowman-Gray. Did you get a chance to watch that?
I didn't watch it, but they talked a good amount about it on the broadcast. I watched a decent amount of the broadcast.
It was neat seeing the history of Bowman-Gray Stadium, and knowing that it's not initially it was not designed to race cars in. It's not a racetrack. It's literally a football field.
Mm-hmm.
And the whatever college team is down there plays there, and local high school teams play there. And they were showing footage from the first automobile races at Bowman-Gray, and it was basically race cars driving around the running track.
Yes, it's the size of a football high school running track.
Absolutely wild.
Which is crazy, because I remember running around the high school track.
Yeah, it's a quarter mile.
Yeah. So
tiny. But
it's a little bit wider, I think, than a normal high school track. It feels a little bit wider. I don't feel like you could have got, I mean, it's over 20 years ago, but I don't remember the Salem High School track being wide enough for two cars.
It was definitely wide enough for two cars. I spent a lot of time on it because I was a band nerd and we had to play every football game. And I remember I've driven U-Haul trucks on it, so or ridden in U-Haul trucks on it, so I know how wide it is. But it definitely was not as wide as the Bowman-Gray track. Now, I think a lot of that is because they added additional apron to the inside, just because they want to make it wider. The other wild thing is because it was never intended to be a race car track, is that there are areas where the stadium cuts out into the racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're coming off turn 4 into the front stretch, you can't be anywhere near the wall in turn 4 because the lane disappears.
Yeah.
And it's just like a wild thought to think about being in a race car, trying to pass somebody on the outside, and also having to remember that the lane you're in, it's going away. You can't be there.
It feels like a thorough drive in Boston.
Yeah. I was going to say it feels like a construction zone. Like you're just driving along and all of a sudden your lane's gone. You got to merge, but you're trying to merge at full throttle with cars an inch away from you on all sides. So it was a very good race. Spoiler alert, skip forward 10 seconds. The winner was Elliott.
Yep.
Once again,
old beige curtains.
Once again, proving he is the world's most boring interview, even after winning a race. The NASCAR's most popular fan has to be rigged.
Has to be. I don't understand.
Not most popular fan. Our fan
Guy's
favorite.
got no riz. No riz.
No personality whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense.
Like I could make like if you were like Kyle Larson is most popular fan, I'd be like, all right, I see that because the guy wins a lot of races. I can see people liking him a lot.
He also doesn't have much of a personality. But
yeah, he doesn't. He's also kind of like, meh.
But
He's
Chase
a fast
Elliott has
driver.
no personality whatsoever. He's fast, but he has no personality. So it's weird to me. The only reason I can see it even continuing to be a thing, it must be just because when people get into NASCAR, they think
Name recognition.
Elliott, it's Bill Elliott's son. That's cool. Because when I first got back into NASCAR a couple years ago, I was like, I'm gonna be a Chase Elliott fan because he's Bill Elliott's son. So for that first year, I bought the number 9 NASCAR 164 diecast, and I was like all about it. And then by the end of the season, I was like, I don't care about this guy at all. Like, there's way more interesting drivers out there. And I've never been one for like the off-track drama, or I don't care about that at all. But you at least want to have somebody that when they get out of the car after win, loss, crash, whatever, will at least be entertaining to listen to. And that's what you don't get with Chase Elliott.
I mean, they've at least gotten out of the pro wrestling stuff. I mean, there's
For sure.
there's some guys that are still heels, but they're not like leaning into the pro wrestler stuff.
Well, they're not programmed to
And-
be a heel. It's not like
Yeah.
NASCAR is not forcing you to not like this guy. It's guys like Kyle Busch that are just, for lack of a better word, assholes.
Yeah.
So he automatically becomes a heel because that's who he is. He's a bad person, so you don't like him.
Yeah.
They had stuff like Denny Hamlin was, a manufactured heel for a while. And then once they stopped doing that, and you see Denny Hamlin now on the regular, listen, he has a podcast and he's always doing interviews. He's always out there. It's like, he's a pretty good dude. Like, he's not a bad person. You wind up not liking people because they're not good people. Like, you don't like Kyle Busch because he's not a nice guy. I don't like Kyle Larson because he's not a nice guy. Like, and because he wins all the time.
Yeah. Did you watch any of the qualifiers?
I didn't watch the actual races. I watched the YouTube breakdown of it all. I saw all the highlights or lowlights or high lowlights.
Like Elliott smoked everybody, I think, in the first heat.
Yep.
Like, all right, it'll be pretty fast. But like, also Hamlin was fast, Bubba was fast, SVG was fast, surprisingly.
Considering it's his first short track, really, in a Cup car ever.
I'll get back to the track house. Like a couple drivers didn't make it in. Ryan Blaney actually didn't make it in. They gave him a provisional spot because he was like the Cup champion from the year before, I think.
Right.
And Larson didn't make it in. He won, but he blew everybody away in the last chance qualifier.
Right.
And it was like, okay, so he clearly did some car setup, and he drives a ton all the time. I thought for sure that if he had a chance and he got up front there, he was going to smoke everybody. But Elliott started on the pole and led most of the race.
Yeah.
Except for that, Hamlin managed to challenge him a little bit. And the outside line was cool. It was cool that there was 2 lines and that people were able to pass him outside.
Sure.
That was pretty wild.
It's cool
because they were running they were running that super soft tire smartly.
Yeah, which I expected them to run.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a little bit of fall off as the laps went on.
Yep.
Neither of the Dillon boys made it. That was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. They were I mean, Kyle Busch almost didn't make it, but he did.
Yep. And then he was out quick. So
yeah.
And it doesn't matter who's driving the 21 car, man. I love the Wood brothers, but it doesn't matter whether it's Harrison Burton or Matt DiBenedetto, but whatever his name is, or this year Josh Berry. That car it always has to spin.
Well, then you have Ricky Spinhouse.
Yeah, well, that's just expected. So
we don't need to engineer cautions. You got Ricky Stenhouse out there.
Yeah,
he'll give you a caution.
He'll take care of it. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. Between the 21 and Stenhouse, you're gonna get some cautions. It's all good. LaJoy seems to spin a lot too.
Yeah,
but
I feel like I was bummed that they let some Bowman-Gray champions into the qualifiers. So those are all the guys that never have driven a 7-gen Cup car at all, ever,
right.
But they won a lot at Bowman-Gray, so they let them into the qualifiers to try to get into the race. So that was kind of cool that they had the chance. Which one of them had made it into the main event, but
That was one of
them
those
wrecked.
things I wanted to bring up about the that 45-minute special that NASCAR put out about Bowman-Gray was they were interviewing people that race there regularly, and I had to laugh because I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, but if somebody called you and was like, "Hey, NASCAR, like actual NASCAR, is going to produce a television special and they want to interview you," you think you'd probably not put on your 30-year-old jorts that are stained from dirt and like you'd brush your hair.
That's authentic, man.
But it was very authentic, we'll put it that way. I was like, man, they must have known this was happening. What are they doing?
I mean, so overall, it was a decent race. There was a lot of passing. It was, Ryan Blaney started at the back and moved his way up, and
He did.
I thought he might have had a chance. It was impressive.
Yep. I think another caution or two would have changed the outcome of the race. I think because I think there weren't enough cautions for them to really kind of learn how to take advantage of a restart. And I think a couple more of them, a couple more people figuring out how to launch the car right, might have changed the outcome.
And getting that drive off the outside was pretty good.
It was a good appetizer. It was a good like appetizer for the season for sure.
Yeah, because we got another week. Super Bowl's this weekend, and then we've
Daytona
got
next week.
Daytona. So, but also Suarez just had like the regular. It was like some insurance company or whatever they sponsor by.
Freeway Insurance. They're an insurance agency.
Yeah, it's okay. But the two Trackhouse has like new colors this year. So like Chastain's car and SVG's car looks so good.
Yes, they did.
Like it's like this gray. It's kind of like a millennial gray, I guess I'd call it, but with like neon letters. And then SVG was like bright blue, neon green letters, and then the Red Bull on the front was like cool. So
yeah, Red Bull teaching Monster a clinic on how to make energy drink liveries.
There were two Monster liveried cars, either in this race or in the heats.
And in the heats they were, because one of them
I can't even tell the difference. Like one is the 35, one is the 54. It's so strange because you've got so the 35 is the other team. It's the third car for 2311. I forget that kid's name. Nope. Ty
Reddick,
Gibbs.
Tyler Reddick. Oh no, because Tyler Reddick had the Jordan car.
That car looked awesome. The unbannable car.
Yep.
I forget his name. He's some young rookie.
Carson Hocevar.
Was it?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Throwing young rookies' names out there.
No, I don't remember his name. He's the 35.
I don't remember who the third driver was.
But you shouldn't. I don't know. You shouldn't be able to have like two. I don't know. It's just weird to have two monster cars by two different teams, because Ty Gibbs is Joe Gibbs Racing, and then you've got the 2311. I mean, they're really like sister teams, but
Riley Herbst.
It's just like bizarre. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yep, Riley Herbst. I don't know much about Riley.
Forgettable.
Herbst.
He wasn't doing very well.
Well, he's new. He's a kid.
But yeah. I'm sorry. The monster cars are just like not good.
Yeah, they're ugly.
But the Wood Brothers car was good,
have a
other than
Red Bull.
them not driving it well.
Right. I don't have a preference Red Bull over Monster. They're both disgusting. But I've always preferred. I won't drink either of them, but I've always preferred Red Bull's liveries on everything. So Monster has never had a good livery. Prove me wrong.
Red Bull feels fancy for some reason because it's European, and Monster, it's like European and like worldwide, and the Monster just feels like gas station boner pills. Like it's just
Monster is the Bowman-Gray.
It's like every murdered out flat black pickup truck has a monster sticker on it, and they just were like, "Yeah, so our livery is just gonna be flat black with green monster sticker." It
Yeah,
just
I
looks like you
honestly,
painted your car at home.
I think that's what it is that Monster is too much of like Kyle culture,
Yes.
whereas Red Bull is international motorsports and airplanes and Flugtag
Yeah.
and cliff diving and snowboarding and all this other cool stuff. And Monster is just like DUI in a Silverado. Like that's
Smashing
really,
drywall. Like
yeah, exactly. That's really the difference.
like it really should be it really should be Kyle Busch with the monster car. I mean, honestly.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So anyway, yeah, it was a good race. Congratulations to Elliott, even though I don't like him. I also don't hate him. He just exists.
I don't like Hendrick. I'm bored with Hendrick in general, but
100%. That's why I was super stoked to see all of the 2311 cars and most of the 2311 cars and most of the Trackhouse cars out there doing really well.
Doing well. Yeah. So those are going to be two strong teams this season. But yeah, that was a good race. I watched a good amount of the Bathurst 12-hour. That was also a good race. I mean, there's only 20 cars in it of GT3s, but that's such a cool track. And
yeah,
it's cool. They start like early in the morning.
Over 700 feet of elevation change.
Yeah.
Over 700 feet, excuse me. Over 700 feet of elevation gain.
Yeah.
Not change. So that whole downhill like S section is absolutely amazing to watch. And every year when this race happens, I always go back and I watch the film of the Starion at Bathurst in '87 because it's like one of those things that makes me in love with Starions is that one particular film, and watching it like change directions sliding down that hill section, like it's just the coolest thing ever.
That Mercedes going off on the hill, that was huge wreck. Did you see it in car after?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and did you hear the audio of it? And he's just like,
I don't know if I heard the audio. No, I know that he was airlifted, and they said he has back injuries. I haven't heard any updates from there. But
he was he got out of the car under his own power, but you could tell he was hurt, and it was definitely like had the air taken out of him.
No question.
You're like that's hard into the belts, and that was a crazy wreck. But probably one of the hardest they were saying they've seen there. But
he's lucky he didn't go over that wall.
Yeah, they'll probably put catch fence there. That was the other thing. It was funny, like watching it, and like the safety teams like roll up, and they had like fire suits on, but none of them had like helmets. Like typically nowadays, like all the safety crews like also have helmets on and stuff, at least like half helmets. And like there, I was like, oh man, this race still feels like a little bit amateur, but not like in a bad. I don't mean that like in a bad way. It's just like a little less professional,
a little more loose.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up to make sure, and he originally was reported that he had an injury to his back, but he's now been released with a clean bill of health. So
okay, good.
Stephen Grove was the driver.
Yeah, that was a hard hit. So
yeah,
but
he must be a gentleman racer because his race car sponsor is his last name. So it says Grove in big letters on the side.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get more cars in the future. Because it was mostly just GT3s, and there's some GT4s. We're saying off the podcast like the GT4 McLarens are really cool looking, but they were kind of getting in the way when they were kind of piling up traffic when they'd all get behind a GT4 or something in the downhill. So
that's multi-class racing anywhere, so you can't really say much about that. So it's funny, we were talking before the podcast, like neither one of us are fans of supercars really, but supercars that are actual race cars, no man. Like McLaren race car, Lamborghini race car, sign me up.
But again, like I was saying, it's just really cool that I could just throw this thing on. It was on YouTube streaming the whole weekend, basically, because it started at 1 in the afternoon and then went, it was 1 in the afternoon on Saturday. And then I was watching it towards some of the end of it while I was watching the Bowman-Gray qualifying. So it was just cool. This weekend, there's the Dubai 24 Hours, which will also be on probably YouTube. I think I looked it up earlier. So
It's definitely streaming on YouTube.
yeah, it's all these lesser known series just stream stuff on YouTube, which is fantastic.
It is fantastic. And ultimately, it's going to lend to more of these events happening because sponsors who make these things happen will see that people can see it. And that will be good. So I'm into it. I'll always put background noise of racing on. You can do all kinds of other things that have racing on in the background. So sign me up. Now I just got to find a way to watch Australian touring cars again.
Yeah. Oh, there's that Tubi channel for NASCAR stuff too. If you want to if there's no other racing on, you've at least got that Tubi channel, and they're showing older races and stuff. So that's cool.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a podcast, Andrew.
That is a podcast. Follow us at Auto Off Topic on Facebook, Auto Off Topic on Instagram and Threads. I am Racing Anger on Instagram and Threads. Come join the Discord. You can have fun with us. We talk about all sorts of goofy stuff. We were talking about pants the other day and snowblowers today. So, yeah, just typical midlife dude stuff.
Yep.
But also there's a lot of car stuff. So,
on top of that, we are now 1 full month into 2025, and we have not made good on our promise to have guests. But
I'm working on it.
It's in the works. It's in the works.
Remind me.
It's in the works. Well, I know that when we have a guest from out of town here in March, we'll probably have them on as well. I'll figure out a way to do a 2-person thing here, or maybe I'll just do an episode just with me and him if I can't figure it out. Maybe a bonus episode. I don't know. We'll figure that out. You can find me on Instagram, TSISS350, the same on Threads. And at the moment, that is really about it.
All right. As always, keep cars analog and aim for the roses.